Rabbi Nachman of Breslev, Tales of Ancient Times. The Lost Princess. Rabbi Nachman said, along the way, I told a story, and everyone who heard it had thoughts of repentance, and it is as follows. There once was a king who had 6 sons and 1 daughter. This daughter was very precious in his eyes. He loved her exceptionally and took great delight in her. One time he spoke with her and lost his temper, and the words, "May the no good one take you," slipped out of his mouth. In the evening she went to her room, and in the morning no one knew where she was. Her father was very distraught, and he went everywhere looking for her. The viceroy arose, seeing that the king was very troubled, and asked that he provide him with a servant, a horse, and money for the journey, in order to search for her. He searched for a very long time until he found her. The following is the account of his search until he found her. He went from place to place for a very long time in deserts, fields, and forests. He searched for her a very long time. As he was crossing a desert, he saw a path to the side and thought to himself, seeing that I've been going such a long time in the desert and I cannot find her, I'll try this path. Maybe I'll come to a settled area. And he went a very long time on that path. Afterward, he saw a castle with several soldiers standing guard around it. The castle was very attractive and well built, and the soldiers were impressively lined around it. He worried that the soldiers would not allow him to enter, but he said to himself, "I will go and try." He left the horse behind and approached the castle. The soldiers did not hinder him. He went from room to room without disturbance, and then came to a reception hall in which the king sat, wearing his crown. There were a number of guards and musicians with their instruments standing before him. It was all very pleasant and beautiful, and neither the king nor any of the other inquired about him at all. He saw their delicacies and fine foods, and he approached and ate, and then went to lie down in a corner to see what would transpire there. He saw that the king ordered for the queen to be brought. They went to bring her, and there ensued a great commotion and joy. The musicians played and sang a great deal, being that they were bringing the queen. They placed a chair for her and set her next to the king. She was the above-mentioned princess, and he, the viceroy, saw and recognized her. After that, the queen looked about and saw a man lying in a corner, and she recognized him. She stood from her chair and went over to him, nudged him, and asked him, "Do you recognize me?" He answered, "Yes, I do. You're the princess who was lost." And he asked her, "How did you come to be here?" She answered, "Because my father blurted out the words, "The no good one should take you, and here, this place is no good." He told her that her father was very saddened and that he had been searching for several years. He asked, "How can I get you out of here?" She answered, "The only possible way to take me out is if you choose a place and dwell there a full year. The whole year you must long to take me out. Any time that you have free, you should only long and request and hope to free me. You should also fast. And on the last day of the year, you should fast and not sleep the entire day." He went to do this. On the last day of the year, he fasted and did not sleep, and then rose and began to journey back. On the way, he saw a tree, and on it were growing very attractive apples. They were tantalizing to his eyes, and he approached and ate from them. Immediately after having eaten, he fell asleep, and he kept a very long time. His servant would try to wake him, but to no avail. When he finally awoke from his sleep, he asked the servant, "Where in the world am I?" The servant told him the story. "You were sleeping a very long time, several years, and I survived on the fruit." He was very pained upon hearing this. He returned there and found her, and she revealed her great distress to him. "If you had only come on that day, you would have removed me from here, and because of one day you lost everything. Nevertheless, it is very difficult not to eat, especially on the last day, when the evil inclination is very overpowering." That is to say, the princess told him that now she would make the conditions more lenient, that from now he would not be expected to fast, for that is a very hard condition to meet. So now, choose a place again, and dwell there also a year, as before. On the last day you will be allowed to eat, only you must not sleep, and must not drink wine, so that you should not fall asleep. The essential thing is not to sleep." He went and did accordingly. On the last day, as he was returning, he saw a spring with a red appearance and the fragrance of wine. He asked the servant, "Did you see that spring that ought to have water in it, but its color is red, and its scent is of wine?" He went and tasted from the spring, and he immediately fell into a sleep that lasted several years, 70 to be exact. Great numbers of soldiers passed with their wagons and equipment, but the servant hid himself from the soldiers. After that passed a covered carriage, and in it sat the princess. She stopped by him, descended, and sat by him, recognized who he was. She shook him strongly, but he did not wake. Then she bemoaned how many immense efforts and travails he has undergone these many years in order to free me, and because of one day on which he could have freed me, he lost it. She cried a great deal about this, saying, "There is great pity for him and for me, that I am here so very long and cannot leave." After that, she took her handkerchief from her head and wrote upon it with her tears, and laid it by him. Then she rose and boarded her carriage and rode away. When he awoke, he asked the servant, "Where in the world am I?" So he told him the whole story, that many soldiers had passed there, and that there had been a carriage, and a woman who wept upon him and cried that there is great pity on him and on her. In the midst of this, he looked around and saw that there was a handkerchief laying next to him. He asked, "Where did this come from?" The servant explained that she had written upon it with her tears. He took it and held it up against the sun and began to see the letters. And he read all that was written there, all her mourning and crying, and that she is no longer in the aforementioned castle, and that he should look for a mountain of gold and a castle of pearls. There he would find her. He left the servant behind and went to look for her alone. He went for several years searching, and thought to himself, "Certainly a mountain of gold and a castle of pearls would not be found in a settled area," for he was an expert in geography. He went to the deserts and searched for there many years. After a long time, he saw a giant man, far beyond the normal human limits of size. He was carrying a massive tree, the size of which is not found in settled areas. The man asked him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I am a man." The giant was amazed and exclaimed, "I have been in the desert such a long time, and I have never seen a man here." He told him the whole story, and that he was searching for a mountain of gold and a castle of pearls. The giant answered him, "Certainly, it does not exist at all." He discouraged him and said that they had muddled his mind with nonsense, for it surely does not exist. He started to cry bitterly, for he felt certain that it must exist somewhere. But the giant discouraged him, saying that certainly he had been told nonsense. Yet he, the viceroy, still said that it must exist. The giant said to him, "I think it is nonsense, but since you persist, I am appointed over all the animals. I will do this for you. I will call them all, for they traverse the whole world. Perhaps one of them will know where is the mountain and the castle." He called them all, from the smallest to the largest, and the varieties of animals, and asked them, and all of them answered that they had not seen these things. He said, "You see that they told you nonsense. If you want my advice, turn back, because you certainly will not find it, for it does not exist." But he pleaded passionately with him, saying, "It absolutely must exist." The giant said to him, "Behold, in this desert also lives my brother, and he is appointed over all the birds. Perhaps they know, since they fly at great heights. Perhaps they saw this mountain and castle. Go to him and tell him that I sent you to him." He went searching for him for several years. Again, he found the giant carrying a massive tree, as before. This giant also asked him, as had the first, and he told him the whole story, and that his brother had sent him to him. This giant also discouraged him, saying that it certainly did not exist. But he pleaded with him as with the first. Then the giant said to him, "See, I am appointed over all the birds, and I will call them. Perhaps they know." He called all the birds and asked them all, for the smallest to the largest, and they answered that they did not know anything about this mountain and castle. The giant said to him, "You see, it certainly does not exist. If you want my advice, turn back, for it simply does not exist." He pleaded with him, saying, "It certainly exists." The giant then said to him, "Further ahead, in the desert, lives my brother, who is appointed over all the winds, and they fly over the whole world. Perhaps they know." He went several more years searching, until he found this giant also, who was also carrying a giant tree. The giant asked him as the others had, and he told him the whole story, as before. But the giant discouraged him, as before. He pleaded with him as well. So the third giant said to him that for his sake he would call all the winds and ask them. He called them, and all the winds came, and he asked them all, but not one of them knew about the mountain and the castle. The giant said to him, "You see, they told you nonsense." The viceroy began to cry bitterly and said, "I know that it exists." As they were speaking, one more wind came. The giant appointed over them was annoyed with it, saying, "Why did you not come with the rest?" It answered, "I was delayed, for I needed to carry a princess to a mountain of gold and a castle of pearls." And the viceroy was overjoyed. The giant asked the wind, "What is expensive there?" That is to say, what things are considered valuable and important there. It answered him, "Everything there is very expensive." So the giant appointed over the winds said to the viceroy, "Seeing that you have been searching for her such a long time, and you went through many difficulties, perhaps now you will be hindered by expenses. Therefore, I am giving you this vessel. Every time you reach into it, you will receive money from it." He then commanded the previous wind to take him there. The wind came storming and brought him there, right to the gate. There were guards posted there that would not let him enter the city. So he reached into the vessel, took out money, and bribed them, and entered the city. It was a beautiful city. He approached a man and rented lodgings, for he would need to stay there some time, because it would need much intelligence and wisdom to free her. He had freed her. How he freed her, the rabbi did not tell, but in the end he freed her. Notes: it is very known for all the books of the Zohar and the Tikkunim, additions to the Zohar, and from the writings of Arizal, that a princess is an exception for the Shekhinah, the divine presence, and the Jewish people, as it were. We have already been given the approval to speak in this language by the Rishonim who preceded us, and by whose words we live. Also, King David and his son Solomon used these expressions frequently. For example, all the honor of the princess is hidden within, and other such terms. The whole book of songs, which is holy of holies, and the entire world is not worthy of it. It is all founded on this theme, and as we say in the prayer before reciting psalms, to unite the woman of youth with her lover, and so on. Thus, also in the prayer before donning tefillin, we speak of uniting the bride and groom. Seeing the prayer book, Sha'arei Tzion, and one who studies the writings of the Ari will see that all of the Kabbalah is based on uniting the aspect of the bride and groom, male and female. All of our rabbis, may their memory be blessed, expressed the existence of the words and their unification using the image of the joining of the bride and groom. For God created man in his image, and all the limbs of the male and female body are in the image of God, as it is written, "And God created the man in his image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them." For the human being, man and woman, are truly a part of God above, and the name of the Lord is embedded within them. And all of the ancient sages used the language of bride and groom to express the drawing near of the Jewish people to their heavenly Father. For all our service in its highest root hints at the uniting of the bride and groom. The aspect of uniting the Holy One, blessed be He, and the Divine Presence. From all this and more, we can see that the exile of the Shekhinah and the Jewish people is an aspect of the lost princess and her estrangement from her lover. In the story of the lost princess, it is clear that she signifies the Shekhinah in exile. For the exile of the Shekhinah began before the creation of the world. As soon as the first man was created, he was supposed to repair this, to raise all the worlds to their proper place, and to reveal the kingship of God immediately, as his kingship will soon be revealed with the coming of the Messiah. However, he did not refrain from eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge. We see this hinted at in the story. At the point when the viceroy fails his test and eats the apple, and through this Adam defied all the worlds, and the Shekhinah descended below into the impure side, as is known. After this, Noah came and attempted to repair. He did not succeed, for he drank wine and became drunk, just as the viceroy failed the second test and drank the wine. Since then, all the sages in every generation have been working to make this repair until the coming of the Messiah, when the repair will be complete. This story unfolds within every individual and at every time, for every individual experiences virtually the entire story in his own life. Every Jew needs to be involved in this repair, the redeeming of the Shekhinah from the exile, raising her from the dust, to extract the kingdom of holiness from among the Gentiles and the other side, among whom she had fallen. All of our service, all the mitzvot, commandments, and good deeds we do, and all the Torah we learn all our lives, all revolve around this point, as is explained in the writings of the sages. Even the simplest Jew with limited understanding, if they go in a straight path, choosing the good and shunning evil, merit to make this repair, to raise the Shekhinah from its downfall according to the degree they sanctify and purify themselves. Thus, every Jew is involved with the search for the princess, to return her to her father and to her father's house, where she had been in her youth. The Jews are the aspect of the viceroy, for they rule over the world. Just as God revives the dead and heals the sick, so do the Jews, each one according to the degree he merits to accomplish his mission, through which he searches for and rises the Shekhinah. To that degree, the Shekhinah reveals herself to him. She comes to him and reveals to him her location and what he must do to find her. This is what we see in the story. The princess lets the viceroy know what schemes he should use to free her. The schemes she sets forth are laid out clearly and simply. Namely, one must choose for himself a place, establish there a routine of repentance and fasting, and long and yearn continually for the Lord, that he should merit to know him, and that his kingdom should be revealed in the world. The central point of raising the Shekhinah out of exile is the publicizing of the presence of God and the world, that all should know of him and acknowledge his kingship. Now, when a man begins to do this, choosing a place to serve the Lord and to yearn for him, sometimes he succeeds to continue for a time, and then, when he is very close to the goal, then, on the very last day, he is sent a test according to his level of mastery. Then, on that critical day upon which all depends, the evil inclination and his cohorts overwhelm him powerfully and sway him with cunning words, and lead him according to their crooked advice. He takes from the fruit and eats it, God forbid, and does not pass the test given to him, that he must pass according to that place and time. Thus, he immediately falls asleep, and sleep signifies losing one's intelligence, that his wisdom and understanding leave him. In these periods, when a person is in the aspect of sleep, God forbid, he passes through what he must. The aspect of the troops that passed by the viceroy while he slept. Then, upon waking and finding out how long he has been asleep, he returns to the princess. She then grants him an easier test. He need not fast, only abstain from wine, that he should not fall asleep. So he returns to his place and yearns to free the princess. But on the last day, he once again fails the test. Since also the second time he does not pass the test and taste from the wine, he falls into a very deep sleep, lasting 70 years. The theme of sleeping for 70 years is elucidated in the Torah, Petach Rabbi Shimon, Likutei Moharan, chapter 60. There it is explained that one can fall into such a sleep that he falls from all 70 faces of the Torah, which is the concept of 70 years. From such a sleep, it is only possible to be awakened by stories from ancient years. When the princess finds him in such a sleep, she cries bitterly and informs him of her newest location, the castle of pearls on the mountain of gold. The message is clear. No matter how many times one falls, Shekhinah continually offers him new advice how to search for the source of his holiness. The princess, so to speak. The viceroy, after all his strivings, wanderings, and painful sufferings which he undergoes to find the princess, then, on the verge of reaching her, loses everything. He falls in this way twice. In spite of all this, he refuses to give up hope entirely, God forbid, and forges on to find the castle of pearls on the mountain of gold. Then, after passing through much more trials and tribulations, he finds the giant carrying the tree. In this giant, and later in his two brothers, we see the concept of towering obstacles that lead one to think his mission is without hope of succeeding. Yet, in spite of all their discouragements, he refuses to be swayed, saying he knows he will find what he is searching for, until finally the very last wind returns and informs him of the location of the princess, and he goes there and frees her. One who gazes on all this with the eye of truth will clearly understand how much one needs to strengthen oneself in serving God, and to what extremes one needs to be stubborn in serving Him, beyond all estimation. Each person, according to his level, his essence and descent, and regardless of what happens to him, contemplate and understand from this story how much the viceroy strived and struggled, and afterwards fell into depression on not having stood in an easy test twice, until he fell to the level of 70 years of sleep. Even so, he did not give up, and had more struggles afterward, and refused to listen to the discouraging characters telling him to abandon his search. The more he resolved not to listen to these people, the more they shifted from adversaries to helpers. Each one gathered the animals or birds he oversaw, sending them to search for him, to no avail, until he came to the one appointed over the winds, through which he finally came to his goal. Consider this and understand. Look upon every detail of the story and see hints and wonderful encouragements to strengthen oneself at all times in the search for serving God. As it is written, search His presence always, for even though the full meaning of the story is beyond our understanding, and we have no conception of what is meant by mountain of gold and castle of pearls and the other themes of the story. Nevertheless, all these hints are true and understood in the light of truth. Each reader can derive progressively deeper understanding and inspirations, if he is willing to listen and accept the import. The same with the rest of the stories. See the entire teaching in Likutei Moharan, Part 1, Chapter 60, for it is a commentary on this story, as we understood from Rabbi Nachman. May his memory be blessed.